In this movie, I'll demonstrate a bunch of tricks that'll help you out when using the crop tool, including how you rotate the image as you crop it. Notice once again we're looking at the cropped version of the image from the previous movie, and I have my crop tool selected here inside the toolbox, which means that I can restore my crop boundary just by clicking in the image like so. All right, now I'm going to make the image nice and narrow just so that I can demonstrate this next trick. Let's say that you want to maintain this aspect ratio as you make the boundary either larger or smaller. Then just go ahead and press the Shift key as you drag a corner handle like so. And if you drag far enough, you'll go ahead and swap the width and height. So instead of seeing a vertical image, you'll end up with a horizontal image instead. And then, of course, you can drag the image inside that boundary as much as you like. You can also establish a specific aspect ratio by going up here to the options bar and clicking on the word ratio to bring up this pop-up menu of specific options, including different aspect ratios that do not include resolution. So in other words, they can contain any size image you like, or these ones that have specific measurements and resolutions assigned to them, which will end up resampling your image, which, as you may recall from the previous chapter, is always a destructive modification. So just be sure that's really what you want if you choose one of these options in this portion of the menu. I'm going to go with this guy right there, 4:5, which is the same as 8:10. And that is going to lock down the aspect ratio as we're seeing here. So in other words, it's 4 wide and 5 tall. Now, that does not mean 4 inches wide or 5 inches tall. There are no units assigned at this point. This is merely an aspect ratio. Now, at this point, as long as I have these values, then anytime I drag one of these handles or one of these sides either, I will end up maintaining the aspect ratio whether I press the Shift key or not. And if I drag far enough like so, then I'll go ahead and swap those two values with each other. Notice that 5 now appears first and 4 appears second, which ends up giving me a horizontal image instead of a vertical one. If you want to return to a freeform crop boundary, then just go ahead and click on this clear button in order to clear out those values like so, and then you can draw your boundary to any size you like. And you can also, by the way, enter your own values. So if I decide I want something that's 7:8, let's say, so that it's very nearly but not quite exactly square, then I can just dial those values in, and Photoshop will constrain my crop boundary accordingly. You also have the option of drawing the boundary from the inside out, and you do that by pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And notice now, if I drag one of these corners, then I'm going to bring it into the center of the image or out away from the center. Now, when I say center, that's not entirely accurate. It is the center by default, but you can move this little target any place you want. So let's say I go ahead and put the target right there on the model's nose, and now I press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag one of these corner handles. Then I'm going to resize the crop boundary with respect to that target. Now, in addition to dragging the target to put it in a specific location, you can also just Alt-click or Option-click, like so, in order to move it to that exact spot. So in my case, I Alt-clicked, or on the Mac, Option-clicked on the chin in order to move the target to this location right there, at which point I can now Alt-drag or Option-drag a corner handle in order to scale the crop boundary with respect to that location. All right, the final thing you can do is move your cursor outside the crop boundary and drag, in which case you're going to rotate the image as we're seeing right here. And notice that Photoshop goes ahead and keeps the crop boundary upright and rotates the image so you can get a real sense of what's going on. And it's also worth noting that we're rotating the image with respect to that target. So the target is remaining fixed on screen, which means that if I move the target to the upper left corner and drag, then we are rotating the image with respect to that top left corner. If I Alt or Option click in the bottom right corner, right there, for example, to move the target to that location, if I Alt or Option click and then drag, notice that I'm rotating with respect to the bottom right corner of the image. All right, so what I'm going to do is make my boundary a little bit bigger like so, and it is constrained, so I have to watch out for that. That is to say, it's constrained to the 7:8 proportions. I'm also going to Alt or Option click right there on the nose. And I'm going to drag the image like so. So I'm dragging outside the boundary in order to rotate it. And what I want you to notice is how the crop boundary is automatically getting smaller in order to crop to the image and not include any of that checkerboard transparency outside the image. If you decide later that you do want to include some transparent pixels, you can always override things just by dragging one of the edges of the image like so. But I'm just going to go ahead and put that guy back in there like so, and then I'll rotate the image back a little bit. In order to really be upright, I think it needs to be right about there. But where this image is concerned, I really don't care what's accurate. I just want to get a good frame. So I'll go ahead and rotate to about this location there, and then I'll expand the crop boundary like so to include just a little more information. And I think I want to keep this guy with the down jacket out of the shot. Now, the thing you have to watch out for when rotating an image is that you are applying a destructive modification. So even though delete crop pixels is turned off, which means that we're not getting rid of any of these pixels outside the crop boundary, we are going to have to rewrite every single pixel inside the image. And that's because pixels are always square. You can't rotate a pixel. So when you rotate the image, Photoshop has to redraw all the pixels, which is ultimately a destructive modification. So in other words, it's okay to rotate the image, but you only want to do so once. So just make sure you like what you see, at which point go ahead and press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac in order to apply that change. And then, of course, if you do change your mind, you can just go ahead and click inside the image and expand the crop boundary like so, or move the image inside the crop boundary. Just be careful not to drag outside of the image, because in that case, you'd be rotating the image twice, which means rewriting all the pixels yet again, which does end up softening the image over time. But I'm just going to press the Escape key in order to escape out. And if you see something like that happen, by the way, where the image just disappears, that's a bug. You can bring the image back, however, just by clicking inside it once again, and then pressing the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. And so there you have it, a few tricks that might help you out when using the crop tool, including how you rotate the image as you crop it here inside Photoshop.